Good evening and welcome back to the Mulligan Moneylines podcast hosted by Wasaga Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Aiden Brown, joined by Ben Garcia and Deagle. We had an electric weekend last week with Week 10. Starting off with Tennessee and Oklahoma. Oklahoma's defense really stepping up at a big time, possibly saving their playoff hopes if they win out. Still have to beat Bama in Bryant-Denny, so I still don't really think there's much of a chance, especially with John Mateer putting on another mediocre performance. 19 for 29, 159 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 1 interception. It's just another example of the Sooners' continuous cycle since Jalen Hurts of these franchise-saving quarterbacks who pan out for a year and then it's on to the next guy. We've seen Caleb Williams leaving with Lincoln Riley. We've seen Jackson Arnold now at Auburn, and now we've got Mateer, a guy that we thought might have been a preseason Heisman favorite, just falling flat.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that, the John Mateer shows exactly why the media shouldn't be allowed to talk about the Heisman race until we get into the season, because they created a false hype and expectation around this kid. And now, he came into the season with overwhelmingly high expectations that almost no one could meet, and he hasn't met them since his injury. And I almost feel bad for John Mateer because they put a burden on his shoulders that he wasn't ready for.
Well, they also did that to Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik. The preseason Heisman favorites were not living up to standard.
Not at all. And if you go look at betting odds, those preseason favorites have absolutely tumbled.
Tanked. Definitely.
Yeah, moving on. Georgia versus Florida, the largest outdoor cocktail party in the South. This game, if you are a true Georgia fan and you've been around for a while, this was an awesome throwback to a simpler time. This game used to be a battle of the Titans, slugging it out. You never knew who was going to win. Didn't matter who was high-ranked, who wasn't highly ranked. It was going to be one of the best games of the season, and it lived up to it this week. It really did. This year was a special game. Gunnar Stockton was not, he showed that he is not going to lose you a game. He had a tough performance, one of his tougher performances, but yet again, he found a way to get a win. Georgia's defense showed up late in the game and early in the game, but specifically late in the game to keep the Dogs' playoff hopes alive. And, they still got a chance to go into Atlanta.
Yeah. Yep. Georgia is going to be one of the best team in the SEC right now, and they have the best situation in the SEC right now. As of right now, they are avoiding the SEC championship, which kind of locks their playoff hopes. As long as they're ranked 11 or above, they're ranked 5. So they're probably going to make the playoffs without having to go to that title championship, which is lost meaning in today's college football.
Yeah, absolutely. Georgia having a huge stop after Gunner's interception right at the goal line. They were able to get that big stop, keep their hopes alive. Yet again, Georgia not covering the spread. I think a lot of us could have seen this coming. Like Ben was saying, it's always really been a gritty game for us, especially, it's not easy. Even after just losing their head coach, they're still able to fire off a solid performance.
Yeah, they played inspired football coming out of losing their coach. It was really, that happens a lot with college football teams. They lose a coach one week. The next week, they come out, they play looser. They play having more fun. This team looked like they had a new energy about them. They did not look discouraged, even when the game got tough. Completely different Florida this week from the week before.
But Florida's always been gritty this whole season. They've been playing games to the wire. This team is underrated, probably the most underrated team in the country right now. I'm not saying they should necessarily be ranked, but they beat Texas and they beat some big time opponents and kept games close.
Absolutely.
But now I'm going to talk about Texas Vandy. Vanderbilt had a terrible start to this game, allowing Texas to score 17 points. They scored off like the first or second play of the offensive drive of the game. Vandy fumbled the football. 17 points got scored on them, and then they decided to try and come back and score 21 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. Yeah. But it was just too little, too late, and Texas took this one away, 34-31.
Yeah, definitely. I think that game for Vandy was lost in the first half. Yep. Controlling time of possession, I think they had over 19 minutes where they're on offense in the first half, and Pavia is able to get their team down into the red zone, but they just cannot convert. Yeah. We've seen that their last few weeks going up against Missouri, We saw it really going as far back as Alabama. Vandy's still a great team, but Texas did really give them the works.
Yeah, this game was so odd to me because it really encapsulated Texas as a football team. This was the best game that Texas has played all season long. But at the end of the game, they played some of their worst football that they've played the entire season. Their hands team almost single-handedly allowed Vanderbilt to make that comeback with those 21 unanswered. I mean, Vanderbilt should have recovered that final onside kick, and they should have had 52 seconds to go down and kick a field goal on a short field, and given how poor Texas's pass defense looked in a prevent scenario, in their 2-minute defense, I think there's a chance Vanderbilt could have gone in and scored a touchdown. There was wide open receivers every time Pavia got back in the pocket in the fourth quarter.
And we're looking at that tight end, Eli Stowers over there at Vanderbilt, really being pretty much the number one receiver on that team despite being a tight end.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. This season has definitely been one of the more interesting ones with very volatile with head coaches. We've seen a lot of big names losing their jobs mid-season, taking these crazy payouts. So we're going to do a little game where I'm going to give you 5 fired head coaches, and you're going to blind rank them based on how much you would want them on your team. Number 1 being you would want them the most, and number 5 saying keep them the heck away from my team. Starting up at number 1, we've got Sam Pittman.
I don't know.
That's tough.
Especially seeing Arkansas's offense after the firing of Sam Pittman.
The offense is tough, and I think Sam Pittman may be one of those guys where you're looking at he is a really good position coach. He's probably the best offensive line coach in the country when he's doing that job. At Georgia, he took Georgia's offensive line to the next level. Crazy recruiter of linemen, but I don't know.
I'm thinking 3.
3, yeah, 3. I was thinking 3 is a good spot for him.
All right, 3 for Sam Pittman. Next up, we got Billy Napier.
He got that win over Texas.
Yeah, Billy Napier is another one of those guys. Great position coach. And he's a Saban tree coach. I would say 4 on Billy Napier.
Yeah, I can go with 4.
Worse than Pittman. Next up, Hugh Freeze.
5.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, Hugh Freeze is shown that he can be electric and win big games. Maybe not at Auburn, but he did show that when he was at Ole Miss and Liberty.
Yeah, I think when he came back to the SEC, he wasn't prepared for that type of football. He was at Liberty for a while. We hired a group of 5 coach, Brian Harsin, then group of 5 coach Hugh Freeze.
Yeah.
We can't score points.
Yeah, I think 5 is fair for Hugh Freeze. So we got Sam Pittman at 3, we got Billy Napier at 4, and we got Hugh Freeze at 5.
Putting a lot of faith in me here in the last 2. I don't know if you're going to like this. Next up, you've got Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly's not a bad coach, and I don't know that he's an elite coach, but he's not a bad coach. So I'm honestly think we're in a good position here. I would say. You think 2?
I think Sam Pittman should have been 2 at this rate.
Yeah. Maybe if we had flipped those, but 2. I guess
he's not going in the 1.
No,
I think Brian Kelly he can't take accountability for problems that are on his team.
Yeah.
He's so immature in these post-game interviews after a tough loss, always blaming his players and their lack of preparation and never his lack of preparation as a head coach.
Yeah.
That leaves the number 1 spot open for James Franklin. So what do you guys think you messed up on?
I like that, honestly. I don't know that James Franklin should have been fired from Penn State. He did show an inability to win the big game, but I think that he was overburdened this season with unreasonable high expectations. A lot like what I said about Mateer. I think a similar thing could be said of Penn State. They were basing everything off of this year's team based on what they did last year, and that was no resemblance to the team that is playing today.
Yeah, Penn State, they've always been really solid with James Franklin. Yeah. He's been there for a long time, and I think that's why he got fired, because Penn State's tired of losing 2-3 games every year and missing out on the Big Ten championship. And now it's not as big of a deal because I'd rather be ranked in the top 12, top 11, and not go to that game than go to that game and risk getting out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit of a fumble, but he can't manage to win the big game. I don't think he would have been fired if he went to any other. He was coaching anywhere else. I think most other places would be fine with that record, but Penn State is fed up with, especially with the players like Saquon Barkley and Abdul Carter these days.
Yeah.
They're tired.
Yeah, and, talking about the AP poll, I'm so glad that we are about to get the college football playoff poll, because the AP week in and week out is the most disappointing poll that I have seen. I mean, we're looking at an Indiana team that has the wins, that has the resume, but they're sitting at number 2 to an Ohio State team that doesn't have any marquee wins. And every big game that they've gone into, really, they've sort of looked lackluster, and they've looked, they've been slow to start all of those games. I don't know that they have any sort of resume to be the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah, no, I mean, totally agree. Fernando Mendoza and that Indiana team have just looked electric, making any team, no matter how good or how bad, just making them look like children out there. He's able to throw the ball well. He's rushing better than anybody else in the country, and I just don't see Ohio State having that same kind of resume. And I think we're seeing that with a lot of teams in the top 10 right now. A lot of them still going off of some earlier in the season performances, even last season. That's the only reason I can think of Ohio State being the number 1 team.
Ohio State and Oregon, there's a huge argument for why is Oregon in the top 10 right now. They lost their most challenging game of the season, and what have they done other than lose that game?
Yep.
I think the solution here is that we need to quit ranking teams in weeks 1 through 4 and actually base the rankings off of this season, especially with the validity of the transfer portal.
Yes.
It's not fair to a team like Indiana to play better football this year but not be rewarded because Ohio State started number 1 based off of last year's ranking.
Right.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
Absolutely. We've got some awesome SEC matchups coming up this Saturday. Starting off with LSU versus Alabama. The Tigers going into Bryant-Denny for a night game. First week not having Brian Kelly. I just think they're going to go out there looking confused. I think Brian Kelly has left that team depleted and just feeling sorry until next season, where they can hope to have something better. I think Ty Simpson's going to put together another great performance, continuing to kind of build up his Heisman stock. I like Alabama at -9.5.
Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree with you here, Aiden. I think LSU comes out a lot like Florida did last week, and I think that they are strong on offense. They look more organized on defense. I think that this is a case where you're going to see the players come out and show you why Brian Kelly wasn't the coach that should have been there. Show you that they are a good team, and their coaches were a lot of the reason why they were being held back,
Well, until proven otherwise, Alabama is the best team in the SEC. Yep. Despite their loss to Florida State, they're undefeated in the conference amongst Texas A&M. Is the only team you can make an argument for as of right now. I do think 9.5 is a little too generous towards the opponent, but I think Alabama's still going to win this game.
I think Alabama comes away with a win, but I'm still taking LSU plus 9.5. Next we have the Missouri Texas A&M. Speaking of the other undefeated team in the SEC, this game is unique. We're going to Missouri on the road. This is a huge game for Texas A&M. A lot of folks are saying that Texas A&M hasn't had a super difficult schedule in the SEC so far, but this is going to be one of those games where they're going to go in, they're going to get their mettle tested. I would say that, a lot of folks saying that Missouri has a huge advantage in the rush game, but I think Marcel Reed adds such a dynamic factor to that with that Texas A&M offense. I think that Texas A&M easily wins this game by 6.5. So I'm taking Texas A&M 6.5, and I think the over at 47.5 hits as well.
Yeah.
I think this is a big test for Texas A&M. If they go in there and do better against Missouri than Alabama did, I would say you'd have to consider Texas A&M to be the best team in the SEC. But Missouri is a good team, and even though they appear weaker than they did when they played Alabama, it's just that's the only loss they've had since. So it's really not totally fair to judge it based on when they were ranked at what time because of the validity of the top 25 and the lack of the CFP poll coming out.
Yep.
I think this game has the chance to come down to the fourth quarter. I think that Ahmad Hardy is capable of keeping a team like Missouri in this game, but I don't think that Bo Pribula really has the firepower to go along with Marcel Reed. I really think that A&M is going to come in and handle business, show why they're the number 3 team in the country. We saw what they did to LSU. I'm taking A&M minus 6.5.
And that's going to lead me to go talk about Vandy again, double Vandy today. We're talking about Auburn Vandy coming up this weekend. It's going to be at Nashville, and this is a case of can Auburn score points? Auburn has the best defense in the country, so as Ben over here says, Auburn can't score, Vandy won't score, and I believe that's how this game's going to go, and it's going to be something like 10-0 Vandy, because I don't think Auburn's going to be capable of scoring points.
Yeah.
We saw what happened with Auburn last weekend in that, frankly, piss-poor performance against Kentucky, just looking unable to do anything offensively, which is weird to me because, I mean, I've seen Jackson Arnold be a good quarterback. He can throw the ball. He can rush with the football.
Just not over the middle of the field.
Exactly. And, Vandy's kind of had that same thing. They're able to drive down the field. They're able to move the football. But once they get into the red zone, they just cannot find the end zone. I agree. I think it's going to be a low-scoring defensive showdown. I am hammering under 45.5.
This is a different one for me. I'm going to give 2 picks, and I'm going to tell you to parlay them. I think that Vanderbilt wins this game minus 6.5, but I also think that under hits. I think it's a lock at 45.5. So I say parlay Vanderbilt points with the under in the game, and you are going to be sure to do well this weekend.
I like it.
I do believe that's our first parlay.
I do believe so.
I'm confident. I don't think that Auburn can score. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing this week is that Auburn is still going to have an inability to score. I don't know that Hugh Freeze was what was holding back the offense.
I could agree.
It was definitely not just Hugh Freeze. Team John Gruden for Auburn. That's where we're at right now.
There we go. As always, thank you for listening to the Mulligan Moneylines podcast brought to you by Wasaga Sports Network, and we'll see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.